There's one thing every single financial investor will tell you. Start investing early. The earlier the better. But in this video, I want to tell you why it might be too early for you to start investing. Let's go. So, the reason everyone tells you to start investing as early as possible is quite simple. Compound interest. Suze Orman, who is this financial advisor everyone got to know through the Oprah show, has this really great example to show how important compound interest is. She says that if you start investing $100 a month from the time you're 35 years old, that when you retire, you'll have $300,000. But if you take the same $100 a month and start investing it from the time you're 25 years old, so 10 years earlier, when you retire, you'll actually have $1 million, so 3 times more money. Basically, if you start investing in your 20s instead of your 30s, you'll triple your money.
Those 10 years cost you $700,000, girlfriend.
Now, in my opinion, Suze Orman actually exaggerates the situation quite a bit. She uses a 12% return on your investment. She assumes 12% every year until you retire. But that's unrealistic. More likely, you're gonna receive the market average, which is about 7%. I mean, if you gave me an investment that was gonna give me 12% every single year for 30 years, I'm taking that every day of the week. But more realistically, you're gonna get about 7% a year. Here's the thing, Suze Orman isn't wrong, she just exaggerates it. Because even if you use the 7% and start investing from the time you're 20 instead of the time you're 30, you're still gonna double your money by the time you retire. Now, all that to say, investing as early as possible is definitely the best way to maximize the amount of money you have when you retire. But there are 2 situations when it might just be too early to retire. And both of those situations at their core are about managing risk. This camera is so wobbly in this wind right now. It's so windy out here. Investing is always risky at some level, and if you don't manage that risk properly, you might find yourself in a whole lot of trouble. So the first way you can manage your risk when you're starting to invest is by having an emergency fund. Experts say you need enough in your emergency fund to last about 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. Your emergency fund is basically for personal things that come up. So your car's engine blows up, or your roof starts leaking, or the world gets hit by a global pandemic and shuts the entire thing down. You know, everyday emergencies. But in all seriousness, the last thing you want to do is have all your money tied up in an investment, and you need that money right now. So I want to tell you about a situation we had recently where we had to actually tap into our emergency fund, and why we're so glad we had that emergency fund before we started investing. So at the beginning of this year, Joyce and I were still traveling full-time with the kids, and we were covering our expenses by making videos for local companies wherever we happen to be in the world. So in February, we were in Traverse City, Michigan. We made a couple videos for some companies there. And then in March, COVID happened. And all of a sudden we found ourselves back in Toronto, no jobs, no income. And of course, no one wanted to hire me for videos at that point because the world was shut down. So I started applying for regular 9-to-5 jobs, and it took me about 2.5 months to find a regular 9-to-5 job. And in that 2.5 months, we were basically covering our expenses from our emergency fund. And if that's not a good example of why you need an emergency fund, then I don't know what is. So one last thing about emergency funds. If you live in Canada, like we do, you want to put your money into a savings account with one of the online banks. So that's mainly EQ Bank or Tangerine, one of those. And the reason is the interest rates on a savings account with an online bank are way higher, like 30 times higher what you would get with a big bank. So for example, right now we have our money with EQ Bank and we're getting 1.5% interest on a savings account, regular savings account. And with one of the big banks, you would get like 0.05% or something ridiculously low like that. I put a link for EQ Bank in the description down below, and if you use my link, I will get a small commission, but the truth is, I've been with EQ Bank for a long time anyways. Do your own research, but I promise you, you will not find a better interest rate on a savings account anywhere in Canada. Now, the second way to manage your risk before you start investing is by paying off your high interest debt. And you may have heard people say something like paying off debt is a guaranteed return on your investment. That's just another way of saying it's a zero risk way to use your money. And let me explain what I mean. Let's say you have $10,000.
High five! Great!
Doesn't matter how you got it. Maybe you saved it up. Maybe your parents gifted it to you. Maybe you got a big tax return or a couple big tax returns. Who knows? However you got the money, you have $10,000. Now you have a decision to make. You can either take that $10,000 and pay off your high interest debt, or you can take the $10,000 and make an investment with it. And why is it that you should pay off that high interest debt? Well, let's think about what the debt is. In Canada, and it's pretty similar in the US, credit card debt, for example, has an interest rate of about 19%. That means if you don't pay off your debt right now and you let it sit there, after 1 year, that $10,000 in debt is going to be actually worth $11,900. So by paying off your debt right now instead of waiting, you're actually coming out ahead $1,900. But take that same $10,000 and put it into an investment, and the average return on an investment is only 7%. That means at the end of 1 year, you have $10,700. You've come out $700 ahead. On one hand, paying off the debt, you came out $1,900 ahead. On the other hand, investing, you only came out $700 ahead. It's much better to pay off that debt. And here's the thing. That $1,900 was a guaranteed $1,900. The interest rate on your debt is guaranteed. It's locked in. It's not going to change. So you guaranteed yourself to come out ahead $1,900. But with the investment, that 7% was not even guaranteed. It was lower to start with, and you didn't even guarantee yourself that you were going to get that amount. You could have come out with 2% or 3%. You could have even lost money and come out with less than $10,000. And that's the risk that's always associated with investments. So by paying off your debt, you guarantee yourself a return on your investment and you manage your risk appropriately. So in summary, the two things you need to do before you start investing: get an emergency fund and pay off your high interest debt. In next week's video, I'm actually going to show you how we paid off $100,000 in debt in just 2 years. So if you're interested in seeing that, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and YouTube will tell you when I post that video. I'll see you next time.